This is the story of Alina. She was the valedictorian who inexplicably never received a single college acceptance letter, or so she was told. Her stepmother had intercepted the mail that Tuesday, shredding the acceptance to keep Alina trapped at home. The stepmother thought she had successfully erased Alina's future, but she had no idea that 10 years later, she would be sitting across a desk from Alina, pleading for a job. Alina grew up in a working-class household where every opportunity was a fight. Her biological mother left when she was 7, and her stepmother Linda made it clear that Alina was an afterthought. By senior year, Alina had perfect grades and glowing recommendations. She was supposed to escape that town, but life had other plans, or rather someone did. This is the story of how one woman's cruelty created the very force that would one day hold her fate in its hands. It was March 14th, a date that should have been the highlight of Alina's young life. She had spent 4 years building the perfect resume. She was the president of the debate club, a volunteer at the local animal shelter, and she maintained a 4.0 grade point average while working weekends at a bakery. Her guidance counselor had told her that State University was a safety school for someone with her potential, but for Alina, it was the only option. It was the only school close enough to visit her sick grandmother, yet far enough to escape the toxicity of her stepmother's house. The financial aid package was the key. Alina's father had passed away years ago, leaving nothing but debts. Linda, her stepmother, had made it clear that she would not contribute a single dollar to Alina's future. This scholarship was her lifeline. It was the difference between a career in architecture and a lifetime of working cash registers. But the education system relies on a fragile link in the chain, the mailman. And on that Tuesday afternoon, the mailman didn't hand the stack of letters to Alina. He handed them to Linda. Linda stood in the kitchen, flipping through the bills and junk mail. Then she saw it. The thick white envelope with the university crest in the corner. She felt the weight of it. She knew exactly what it was. In the hands of a supportive parent, this would be a moment for celebration. But in Linda's hands, it became a weapon. She didn't open it to read the congratulations. She didn't care about the partial scholarship offer or the work-study program. She saw one thing, a ticket out for the girl she loved to torment. Without a moment's hesitation, Linda walked to the fireplace. She struck a match and watched the edges of the envelope curl and blacken until the contents were nothing but ash. She swept the remains into the bin and never said a word. Alina came home an hour later, tired but hopeful. She checked the mailbox, but it was empty, just like the day before and the day before that. She tried to shake off the anxiety. Linda sat in the living room, watching television, sipping her tea, acting as if the world was perfectly normal. Days turned into weeks. April arrived, and with it, the silence from the university became deafening. Alina began to panic. She called the admissions office, her hands shaking. The representative on the other end was polite but firm. They told her that a decision had been mailed weeks ago. They told her that the acceptance had been confirmed. Alina felt her heart stop. She told them she never received anything. The representative apologized but explained that the deadline for accepting the offer had passed. The spot had been given to someone on the waiting list. Alina dropped the phone. She felt the floor drop out from under her. She had been rejected by a system that was supposed to be fair. She didn't know that the rejection was handmade, crafted by the woman sitting just 10 feet away. Linda watched the tears stream down Alina's face with a satisfied smirk. She told Alina that maybe she just wasn't cut out for college. She said that maybe God had a different plan, a plan that involved Alina staying right where she was, working at the local diner and paying rent to her stepmother. Alina felt a piece of her soul die that day. The dream of architecture, the dream of escape, it all seemed to evaporate. She watched her classmates post their acceptance letters on social media. She watched them buy dorm furniture. She felt a bitter jealousy that she couldn't quite explain. Why had the universe singled her out? She didn't know that the universe wasn't to blame. She didn't know that her own flesh and blood, the only mother figure she had left, had betrayed her in the most calculated way possible. Alina retreated into herself, taking extra shifts at the bakery, stuffing every tip into a jar labeled someday. Linda thought she had won. She thought she had successfully derailed the train and kept her servant within reach. But she had made a critical miscalculation. She assumed that denying Alina the easy path would stop her completely. She didn't realize that for a girl who had survived her father's death and a tyrant stepmother, obstacles were just stepping stones. Alina was about to start climbing a much harder ladder, one that would lead her to a height Linda could never reach. The next 3 years were a blur of coffee grounds, exhaustion, and night classes. While her former classmates were attending sorority mixers and pulling all-nighters in libraries, Alina was pulling double shifts at the diner and taking the bus across town to the community college. She didn't have the luxury of the full university experience, but she had something else, a desperate, gnawing hunger that wouldn't let her quit. Every tip she earned went into a savings account. Every spare moment was spent studying architectural theory from used textbooks she bought online. She lived in the cramped attic space of Linda's house, paying rent that was precisely calculated to keep her broke. Linda watched her like a hawk, constantly inventing new chores and errands to keep Alina from studying, convinced that if she just applied enough pressure, Alina would eventually drop out and become the live-in caretaker Linda always wanted. But Linda underestimated the resilience of a girl who had already lost everything. Alina learned to study in 15-minute intervals. She memorized formulas while scrubbing floors. She practiced drafting on napkins during her breaks at the diner. The abuse didn't break her, it forged her into something harder, something that could not be bent. By the time she turned 21, Alina had earned her associate's degree with honors. It wasn't the prestigious architecture degree she had dreamed of, but it was a credential and it was her ticket out. She applied for an entry-level administrative position at Henderson and Wells, one of the largest real estate development firms in the city. It wasn't a design job, but it was a foothold in the industry she desperately wanted to enter. The interview was a disaster. The hearing manager looked at her community college transcript with barely disguised disdain. He asked why she hadn't gone to a better school. He questioned her gaps in employment. Alina kept her composure, explaining her family situation with carefully edited honesty. She didn't get the administrative job, but she did get offered a position in the mailroom sorting packages for minimum wage. It was a humbling start, but Alina took it. She moved out of Linda's house the following weekend, leaving behind a screaming stepmother who accused her of abandoning the family. Alina didn't care. She was free. She rented a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat and threw herself into her new job with terrifying intensity. Within 6 months, Alina had memorized the names and positions of every executive in the company. She knew which architects were working on which projects. She studied the blueprints that passed through her hands, teaching herself the practical side of design that no textbook could convey. She stayed late, volunteered for extra shifts, and networked with anyone who would give her 5 minutes of their time. It was during this period that the first thread began to unravel. Alina was back in her hometown for a mandatory legal meeting regarding her late father's remaining estate, a matter Linda had dragged out for years. While waiting in the lawyer's office, she ran into her former high school guidance counselor, Mrs. Patel. The older woman's face lit up when she saw Alina. She asked how the university had gone. She asked about the architecture program. Alina, confused, explained that she had never attended, that she had never even received an acceptance letter. Mrs. Patel's smile froze. She told Alina that she had personally called the admissions office to confirm Alina's acceptance. She said the university had guaranteed that the packet was mailed. A cold suspicion began to form in Alina's gut, but she pushed it down. She didn't have proof. She didn't want to believe that anyone could be that cruel, but the seed had been planted. 2 weeks later, the breakthrough came. Alina was sorting mail at work when she stumbled across an internal announcement about a new scholarship program for employees seeking further education. The program was specifically designed for non-traditional students, people who had taken unconventional paths. It was exactly what she needed. She applied immediately. The process required her to submit her original high school transcripts and a personal statement. When she requested her records from the school district, they sent her a full file, and inside that file, buried at the bottom, was a scanned copy of a document she had never seen before. It was a fax from the university admissions office, dated March 18th, 3 days after the original letter was supposed to have arrived. The fax was addressed to the high school guidance department. It was a confirmation of receipt for the declination letter that had supposedly been sent by Alina's family. The signature at the bottom was a crude forgery of her father's name, who had been dead for years. Alina stared at the paper, her hands trembling. The signature wasn't her father's. It was someone's attempt to copy it. Someone who had access to his old documents. Someone who wanted to make sure the university thought Alina wasn't interested. The room seemed to spin. All those years of doubt, all those nights wondering why the universe had abandoned her, it wasn't the universe. It was Linda. It had always been Linda. The anger that surged through Alina was unlike anything she had ever felt. It was a white-hot rage that threatened to consume her. But then something shifted. As she sat there in the mailroom, surrounded by packages and letters, a new emotion replaced the rage. It was clarity. Alina realized that Linda hadn't just stolen her past, she had inadvertently shaped Alina's future. If Alina had gone to that university, she would have graduated with a standard degree and entered a crowded job market. Instead, she had fought through mud and barbed wire. She had earned her education in the trenches. She had learned grit, resourcefulness, and the art of survival. Linda had tried to bury her, but she had only planted a seed. And now Alina was about to grow into something that Linda could never have anticipated. She folded the fax and placed it in her bag. She didn't need to confront Linda. She didn't need to scream. The best revenge wouldn't be a confrontation, it would be a coronation. Alina looked around the mailroom one last time. This wasn't where her story ended. This was where it began. She walked out of the room with a new sense of purpose, unaware that just 10 floors above her, Linda was interviewing for a mid-level accounting position at the very same firm. Fate was setting the chessboard, and neither woman knew just how small the world was about to become. Alina treated the next 4 years like a military campaign. She attacked her education with the same ferocity she once reserved for survival. The company's scholarship program paid for her bachelor's degree in architecture, which she completed in 3 years by overloading semesters and taking winter courses. She didn't stop there. While her peers were sleeping, she was obtaining certifications in project management, sustainable design, and urban planning. She became a walking encyclopedia of real estate development, absorbing knowledge from every department she touched. Her ascent through the ranks was unprecedented. She moved from the mailroom to an administrative assistant role within 8 months. From there, she transitioned into a junior designer position after catching the eye of the lead architect during a company hackathon. Her designs were raw but brilliant, showing a unique understanding of how spaces affect human behavior. It was architecture born of necessity, of understanding what it feels like to be trapped in a space you cannot control. By the time she was 26, Alina was a senior project manager overseeing the renovation of the city's historic downtown district. It was the kind of project that made careers, and she was delivering it ahead of schedule and under budget. The CEO of Henderson & Wells, Marcus Thorne, had taken a personal interest in her development. He saw in Alina the same hungry ambition he had possessed 40 years ago before he built the company from nothing. He began grooming her for executive leadership, inviting her to high-level strategy meetings and introducing her to major clients. But while Alina was ascending the north tower of the corporate headquarters, Linda was settling into the south tower, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering above her. Linda had been hired as a mid-level accountant in the finance department, a position she had secured through a combination of exaggerated credentials and the sheer force of her manipulative personality. She was competent enough to keep her job, but her reputation in the office was already beginning to sour. She was the kind of employee who always took credit for group projects but never accepted blame for mistakes. She hoarded information like currency, believing that being the only one who understood a particular filing system made her indispensable. She made snide comments about younger colleagues, particularly the women, dismissing their achievements as luck or favoritism. She didn't know that one floor above her, in a sleek corner office with a view of the city skyline, the stepdaughter she had tried to destroy was signing off on department budgets, including hers. The irony was lost on Linda, but it was not lost on Alina. She had known Linda was in the building for months. She had seen her name on employee rosters, heard her voice in the cafeteria, even caught a glimpse of her in the elevator once from behind the safety of closing doors. Alina had chosen not to act. She watched from a distance, observing how Linda operated in a professional environment. She saw the same patterns of manipulation and cruelty that had defined Alina's childhood, now directed at a new set of victims. Alina filed this information away, waiting for the right moment. That moment arrived on a Tuesday in October. The company was preparing for its quarterly board meeting, a high-stakes presentation that would determine the trajectory of the firm for the next year. Alina was slated to present the downtown revitalization project, a showcase of her team's work that was expected to secure a massive round of additional funding. The pressure was immense, and Alina had been working her team around the clock to perfect every detail. Linda, meanwhile, was struggling. An audit of her department had revealed discrepancies in several vendor accounts, nothing criminal but enough to raise eyebrows. She needed a distraction, something to shift the focus away from her own performance. When she saw the internal announcement about Alina's presentation, a plan began to form in her mind. She recognized the name immediately. She knew exactly who Alina was, and she assumed that Alina's rapid rise was fraudulent. In Linda's worldview, people like Alina didn't deserve success. She believed that Alina must have slept her way to the top, or forged her credentials, or manipulated someone into giving her opportunities she hadn't earned. It was the same psychological projection Linda had always used to justify her own cruelty. She decided that exposing Alina would be her ticket to redemption, a way to prove her own value to the company while taking down a rival she had underestimated for years. Linda began to dig. She pulled Alina's original employment file looking for discrepancies. She found the community college transcript, the mailroom application, the lack of an initial university degree. She didn't understand the scholarship program or the night classes. She didn't see the certifications or the performance reviews. All she saw was a girl she thought she knew, a girl she believed she could still crush. The morning of the board meeting, Linda made her move. She didn't go through proper channels. She didn't schedule a meeting with HR or bring her concerns to a supervisor. Instead, she marched into the executive suite 15 minutes before the presentation was set to begin, armed with a folder of what she believed was incriminating evidence and a sense of righteous indignation that bordered on delusion. She burst into the conference room where Alina was doing a final review of her slides. The room was filled with senior executives, board members, and Marcus Thorne himself. They all turned to look at Linda, who stood in the doorway with a triumphant smirk on her face. She announced that she had urgent information about the integrity of the presenter. She claimed that Alina had falsified her credentials. She waved the old employment file like a warrant for arrest. She declared that Alina was nothing but a community college dropout who had no business being in a room with professionals. The silence that followed was absolute. Alina stood at the head of the conference table, laser pointer still in hand. She didn't flinch. She didn't panic. She simply looked at Linda with an expression that was neither angry nor afraid. It was the look of someone who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. The room held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next, completely unaware that they were about to witness a reckoning 10 years in the making. Alina set down her laser pointer with deliberate calm. She looked at Linda standing in the doorway, chest heaving with self-righteous fury, clutching that folder like a weapon. The executives around the table shifted uncomfortably, uncertain whether to intervene or let the scene play out. Marcus Thorne leaned forward in his chair, his eyes moving between the two women, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Alina spoke quietly. She said that she was glad Linda had brought up the topic of credentials because there were some things about her own history that she had been waiting to discuss. She walked toward Linda, closing the distance between them with measured steps. She said that Linda was right about one thing. Alina had indeed started her education at a community college, but what Linda didn't know was why. The room was silent. Alina continued. She explained that she had been accepted to the State University Architecture program on a full scholarship in March of her senior year. She said that the acceptance letter had arrived at her home, addressed to her, confirming everything she had worked toward, but she never saw that letter. Someone else saw it first. Linda's face began to change. The triumphant smirk faded, replaced by something flickering in her eyes. It was recognition, it was fear. Alina said that someone had taken that letter and burned it in the fireplace. Someone had forged her late father's signature on a declination form and faxed it to the university, giving away her spot to another student. Someone had spent years telling her that she wasn't good enough, that she should give up, that she was meant for nothing more than serving others in her own home. The executives were listening now with rapt attention. This was no longer a presentation about urban development. This was something far more personal, far more explosive. Alina reached into her bag and pulled out the facts she had discovered 2 years earlier, the document that had confirmed what she had always suspected. She held it up so the room could see. She said that she had found this in her school records. She said that the signature at the bottom was a forgery. And she said that the person who committed that forgery was standing right in front of them. Linda's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her face had gone pale. She looked around the room at the executives, searching for an ally, finding none. She stammered that this was ridiculous, that Alina was making up stories to cover her own incompetence. But Marcus Thorne had stood up from his chair. He walked toward Alina and took the facts from her hand. He studied it for a long moment, his expression darkening. He asked Linda if she had any response to these allegations. Linda tried to speak, tried to deflect, tried to spin her way out of the trap she had walked into, but the evidence was right there and the forged signature was clear. Then Alina delivered the final blow. She said that she hadn't just earned her degree through the company's scholarship program. She said that she had graduated with honors from one of the most competitive architecture programs in the state while working full-time. She said that every certification, every award, every performance review in her file was documented and verified. She said that she had built her career on hard work, while Linda had built hers on deception. She turned to Marcus Thorne and said that she had been meaning to discuss something with him. She said that given the upcoming restructuring of the finance department, she wanted to propose that she be considered for the newly created position of Director of Strategic Development, a role that would give her oversight of budget allocation across multiple departments, including accounting. The implication hung in the air like a thunderclap. Alina was not just Linda's colleague, she was about to become her boss. Marcus Thorne looked at Alina for a long moment, then he looked at Linda, then he called for security. He said that pending a full investigation into the documents Alina had presented, Linda was to be escorted from the building and placed on administrative leave. He said that if the forgery was confirmed, there would be legal consequences. Linda's legs gave out beneath her. She slumped against the doorframe, her face a mask of disbelief. She had walked into this room expecting to destroy Alina's career. Instead, she had destroyed her own. Security guards arrived and led her away, her protests echoing down the hallway as the elevator doors closed behind her. The room exhaled collectively. The executives looked at Alina with new eyes, seeing not just a talented architect but a woman who had overcome unimaginable obstacles to reach this moment. Marcus Thorne placed a hand on Alina's shoulder and told her that she didn't need to wait for the restructuring. He said that the director position was hers if she wanted it. He said that he had been waiting for her to ask. Alina accepted with quiet grace. She returned to her presentation, delivering the remaining slides with composure and precision. The board approved her funding unanimously. By the end of the meeting, Alina had secured both her professional future and her personal vindication. But the story didn't end there. 3 weeks later, after the investigation confirmed the forgery, Linda was formally terminated and barred from working in the industry. Legal proceedings were initiated to address the fraud, and Alina was called to testify. She stood in the courtroom and told her story from beginning to end, not as a victim but as a survivor. The judge looked at Linda with barely concealed contempt before sentencing her to 2 years of probation and mandatory counseling. And then Alina did something no one expected. After the sentencing, she walked out of the courthouse and drove to the old neighborhood. She parked outside the house where she had grown up, the attic room where she had studied by candlelight, the kitchen where she had cried over mail that never came. She sat there for a long time, not out of anger or bitterness, but out of gratitude. She realized that if Linda had never destroyed that letter, Alina would have taken the easy path. She would have been just another architect with a standard degree and a conventional career. Instead, she had become something stronger, something forged in fire. She drove away from that house without looking back. She had a meeting the next morning with the board of directors. They wanted to discuss her proposal for a new scholarship fund specifically designed for students who had overcome extraordinary obstacles. Alina had named it the Phoenix Initiative, and in the pile of applications on her desk was a letter from a girl in a neighboring town, a girl with perfect grades and a nightmare home life, a girl who needed someone to believe in her. Alina smiled as she read the application. She knew exactly what she was going to do. She was going to make sure that this time the letter reached its destination. Alina's story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth about the nature of success and the strange geometry of fate. We often like to believe that talent alone determines our trajectory, that the cream rises to the top regardless of the container it is kept in. But Alina's journey proves that sometimes the most extraordinary lives are born not from privilege, but from the desperate need to escape its opposite. Linda thought she was crushing a spirit; she was actually tempering steel. Every obstacle she placed in Alina's path became a lesson in resilience, a masterclass in survival that no university could ever teach. The very cruelty intended to keep Alina small was the catalyst that made her undeniable. The irony is thick enough to taste. If Linda had simply allowed Alina to go to college, Alina might have become a good architect, perhaps even a successful one. But she likely would have remained the quiet, trusting girl who assumed the world played by the rules. It took the betrayal to forge the leader, the executive capable of staring down a boardroom and building a future from the ashes of a stolen past. Linda didn't just lose her job and her stepdaughter, she lost the only battle she ever fought, the one to keep someone else beneath her. Today, Alina runs the Phoenix Initiative, changing dozens of lives every year. She doesn't speak to Linda, who still lives in that same small town working low-level jobs, bitter about a world she believes wronged her. Linda never understood that the person who wronged her was staring back from the mirror every morning. Alina, meanwhile, spends her days opening doors for others, ensuring that no other talented girl has to wait 10 years to find out she was worthy all along. Alina proved that the best revenge isn't destruction, it is construction. It is ensuring that the cycle stops with you and that the next generation inherits a smoother path. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Have you ever had someone try to hold you back only to find it made you stronger? We read every single one. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.